Hook. A parking spot is a simple thing. A small, rectangular piece of asphalt that you pay for, that you expect to be there when you get home. But what happens when someone decides the rules don't apply to them? Not once but twice. For one woman, a dispute over a parking spot escalated into a late-night standoff involving flashing lights, a tow truck, and a confrontation that had nothing to do with the stranger whose car was being hauled away. The real conflict was waiting for her inside her own home. Our story begins in a townhouse-style apartment complex, the kind of place where community and order are part of the appeal. For a young woman and her husband, who had made their home there since 2022, it was a peaceful place to raise their son. One of the key amenities was the gated parking lot. It offered security, peace of mind, and, for $25 a month per spot, a guaranteed place to park. The couple paid for 2 spots, a necessary convenience to ensure they were always close to their front door, especially when juggling a child and groceries. The rules were simple and displayed on multiple signs at the entrance. If you park in the gated area without a paid tag, your car will be towed. There was no ambiguity. Recently, the hum of daily life was interrupted by the sounds of construction. The complex was undergoing some work, and the apartment manager sent out a mass email to all residents. It was a standard notice, explaining that certain parking spots would be temporarily reassigned to give the workers better access. The instructions were crystal clear. If your spot was affected, you were to come to the office to be assigned a new temporary one. The email ended with a firm reminder: do not park in spots you are not assigned to. For our storyteller, this was just a piece of information. Her 2 paid spots were not on the list. For her, nothing had changed. A few nights later, that sense of order was broken. She and her husband were returning home late, tired from their outing. As they passed through the gate, their headlights swept across the parking lot and landed on her spot. But her car wasn't in it. A strange vehicle was. It was a frustrating, but not uncommon, urban annoyance. They didn't recognize the car, so there was no door they could knock on, no neighbor they could call to politely ask them to move. With no other option, she carefully maneuvered her car into a space near her neighbor's spot, acutely aware that she was now technically in violation of the rules. She spent the night with a low-level anxiety, hoping the tow truck didn't make its routine patrol before morning. Thankfully, it didn't. She woke up, and her car was still there. The next day, she received a message from a neighbor that changed everything. The neighbor had seen the man park in her spot the previous day. Acting as a good citizen, the neighbor had approached him, pointing out that the spot was assigned and belonged to someone else. The man's response was not one of apology or misunderstanding. It was one of pure defiance. He looked at the neighbor and said, "I'm not moving my car." Now, the situation was different. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake made in the dark. It was a deliberate act by someone who had been warned and had chosen to ignore that warning. The initial annoyance our storyteller felt began to curdle into genuine frustration. She was paying for a service, a guarantee, that this man was casually disregarding. Last night, it happened again. Her phone buzzed with another message from the same helpful neighbor. The man was back, his car once again sitting squarely in her paid-for spot. This time, there was no hesitation. The grace period was over. She drove home, parked her car temporarily, and walked into her apartment not with resignation, but with a plan. She found the number for the towing company contracted by the complex. She made the call, her voice calm and firm. She explained the situation. Someone was parked in her assigned spot. She gave them the spot number, a description of the car, its make, model, and color. The dispatcher assured her a truck was on its way. After she hung up, she messaged her neighbor. They both decided to wait outside, standing by their respective front doors, keeping a vigil. It wasn't just about seeing the conclusion, it was practical. There had been issues in the past with the tow company taking the wrong car, and they wanted to be there to ensure the right vehicle was removed. And here's where the story takes a turn, into what she herself admits was a little petty. As the tow truck arrived, its yellow lights flashing and casting long shadows across the parking lot, a feeling of vindication washed over her. The driver expertly backed up, the hydraulic lift whirred to life, and the chains were secured around the offending car. As the vehicle was hoisted into the air, an unmovable object finally being moved, she and her neighbor started to clap. They laughed. It was a release of pent-up frustration, a small, shared victory. The man had been warned by the signs, by the manager's email, and by a neighbor in person. This was not a surprise, it was a consequence. She took out her phone and snapped a few pictures of the car being hauled away, a digital trophy of her successful campaign. She sent them to her husband, who was still at work. She expected him to share in her satisfaction. His reaction, however, was not what she anticipated. When he arrived home later that evening, the air was thick with tension. He wasn't pleased. He wasn't amused. He was concerned, and a little angry. He told her she shouldn't have called the tow truck. In his view, she was starting unnecessary confrontations. For 4 years, they had lived in the complex peacefully, without any issues. Now, he argued, she was creating problems, making enemies out of neighbors. He painted a worrisome picture. What if this guy retaliates? What if he keys her car, or worse? He didn't feel that a single parking spot was worth the risk she was now putting their family in. His priority was to keep the peace, to avoid conflict at all costs. She listened, but she couldn't agree. She pushed back, her voice filled with the justification she felt so strongly. This wasn't just about a slab of concrete. She wouldn't have done it, she explained, if they didn't pay for those spots every single month. She wouldn't have done it if the man hadn't been explicitly warned and chosen to ignore it. But most importantly, she wouldn't.